KCB, DSC, ADC, DL, First Sea Lord and Chief of Naval Staff, June 2014. Introduction. This book is about how the naval part of the First World War was fought, about what the navies and their governments expected, about what limited them, and about the many surprises they encountered. It is not a full operational history, but instead it explores various themes in the naval history of the war, many of them technological and tactical. Without such exploration, much of what happened during the war does not make sense. For example, the quick destruction of 3 British battlecruisers at Jutland might seem to prove that the battlecruiser concept was fatally flawed, or that German shells were disastrously superior to British, except that it could be traced to extraordinarily dangerous British practices adopted after the same German guns and shells proved ineffective at the earlier Battle of Dogger Bank. Moreover, contemporary British documents show that the Royal Navy came to exactly that conclusion at the time. The conclusion is not that, had the battlecruisers been handled better, the Royal Navy would have won, but more that the battle should have been even more of a draw than it was. German documentation gives some indication of the impact of the battle on their fleet, which was not quite what is usually assumed. A better understanding of war planning and tactical development on both sides illuminates the actions that the two navies took, both at the beginning of the war and later on. Above all, the naval part of the First World War involved new technology. The most recent experience of modern naval war, the Russo-Japanese War of 1904-1905, was only a decade old, yet in the intervening period, navies had been revolutionized. Though fire control was primitive at best, both Russian and Japanese heavy guns hit at unprecedented ranges, and some of those hits seemed decisive. This experience was used to justify the new dreadnoughts in the Royal Navy and the U.S. Navy. Alongside the guns was extensive use of sea mines, one of which sank a Russian battleship in 1904 and killed the best Russian naval commander, Admiral Makarov. Wartime users of sea mines so impressed both the British and the Americans that they converted existing cruisers into specialized mine layers. Alongside mines were torpedoes, mainly surface-launched. Although torpedoes did not live up to their advertising during the war, they were generally classed alongside mines as devastating weapons, capable of sinking a capital ship with a single hit. By 1904, torpedo range and accuracy were beginning a dramatic rise, which helped create the dreadnought revolution, greater gun ranges to keep battleships out of mutual torpedo range. By 1904, torpedo threats in narrow seas such as the English Channel and parts of the Mediterranean had already much affected British naval thinking. The advent of dreadnought battleships, the first of which was completed only 8 years before the outbreak of the war, dramatically changed the way in which fleet power was calculated. In 1904, even minor powers had large battle fleets, built up over a long era of more or less stable technology. On that basis, it was unlikely that a single battle could change the balance of naval power as understood by the major powers. In 1914, the fleets of the minor powers were entirely obsolete. Even major powers like France and Russia were only beginning to commission dreadnoughts. The number of such ships was so limited that it was possible to imagine a single decisive battle in which a dreadnought fleet might be wiped out. It would take so much effort to replace such a fleet that for the loser the naval war might effectively be over. This possibility of decision at sea contrasted with the changing reality of war ashore, in which national resources in terms of men and materiel were so vast that no single battle or campaign was likely to be decisive. Given the possibility that a big battle would destroy the core of a fleet, governments and naval commanders were understandably cautious. It was not only Admiral Jellicoe who could lose the war in an afternoon. The result was that the massively expensive battle fleets generally were not risked, so that there was only a single battle between them.